What is going on, Optimistic Fan Club? Welcome back to the show. We are here for our Tuesday episode. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Page has been booming the past couple of weeks, and we're looking to continue bringing this out. We most recently dropped the Shedeur Sanders film breakdown that I created pre-draft. So those were all my pre-draft thoughts. Go check that out. That's live now. It's getting some good traction out there. And we are going to have a lot more film rooms coming out, and we're going to talk about that a little today. So the agenda for the day, we're going to be talking about the concept of being a finished product, leaving college football or any sport in general for that matter. But we're going to be talking about that, why Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur are not finished products, why we got to give them their time, allow them to grow. And it kind of relates to the concept of waiting to allow one of those two guys to start, whoever they feel is the better fit. So we're going to talk on that. We're also going to talk about Harold Fannin Jr. today, the Browns' third-round draft pick. I've been extremely high on this guy. He was really my favorite tight end outside of Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland, who were really the consensus 1 and 2 in this past draft. But in terms of a value pick, getting a guy outside of the top 20, because those tight end prospects were so great, like Harold Fannin is a steal in the third round, because I really do believe in previous drafts, he would have been the number one guy taken, or had he gone to a bigger school, he could have been the number one guy taken this year. He is that talented. We're going to have a film breakdown coming out later this week. I've already recorded it. Just have to go through the editing process, but this guy is ultra special. We're going to talk a little bit about him today, give you a preview of what's to come in that film breakdown, but I feel like you guys will enjoy that. And we're going to be going more in depth on all of these guys. We've been getting questions about, like, are we going to do a film breakdown on Dillon Gabriel? We're going to do one for all of these guys as the weeks go on and as we work closer towards that season, so we can get a better idea of who it is that is on this Cleveland Browns roster right now. Then we're going to touch on Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers, that current situation, bit of a mess. Darrell Doucette, the Team USA flag football guy, because got some thoughts in terms of some of his recent quotes. And then just some little things here and there. So without any further delay, got to get a better one. There we go. Let's get into it. So right now, the Browns are currently gearing up for OTAs. They are starting today. So it's going to be the first time that, Flacco, Pickett, Shedeur, and Dillon Gabriel are all on the field trying to split reps to some degree. And this has really been a huge talking point. I think it's been more so a void-filling talking point of like, oh my gosh, what are the Browns going to do? They have 4 guys. There's not that much practice time. They got to split the reps. Da-da-da-da-da. We're hearing all this going back and forth. And then there was that leak earlier on. I don't know if that's still holding true, but that Dillon Gabriel and Kenny Pickett are going to be the guys taking the number 1 and number 2 reps. Who knows if that's still true? Even if that's the case, that is a clear indication, not that those guys are going to be getting all of the reps that should be going to other guys and that they're on a pathway to becoming a starter. That is a clear indication. If you haven't been around the practice world at this point in the season, that those two guys are competing for that third quarterback spot. That is what they're trying to do. They're trying to get this out of the way immediately to say, like, is Kenny Pickett that much better than Dillon Gabriel? And is Dillon Gabriel on a pathway to becoming a guy with a lot more potential than what Kenny Pickett has shown through the first few years of his career? They are going to let those guys duke it out. They are going to allow some practice tape. They're going to allow some buzz to build. So there's interest growing in those guys. And I think in particular, Kenny Pickett, because that's the guy who Cleveland is going to want to move at some point. And with the case of Kenny Pickett, I think he was kind of screwed from the start because he was a first-round pick. He was a guy who the Steelers took really way too early, if you look at it in retrospect. And yes, he went out and he had a solid record as a starting quarterback and a decent touchdown to interception ratio, but that was primo Steelers score 15 points and have their defense rattle off some miracle sequence that ultimately wins them the game. It was not quarterback play or even offensive play in general that was winning them those games. So Kenny Pickett was kind of thrust into this position where he didn't have a lot of ability to succeed or to show that he could be an elevator of people around him, because the Steelers, for long, and we're going to touch on this later with the Aaron Rodgers thing, they have just been so middling for so long, really since they went to the Super Bowl and lost to Aaron Rodgers back in, what was that, 2011, 2012. They have been running the same formula over and over and over. Big Ben finally retires. They didn't have any clear succession plan in place. They haven't been in position to draft a quarterback for so long up until this year. And they took Will Howard ultimately, because, and again, we're going to talk about that later as to why they didn't take Shedeur Sanders. But they've just been in the spot, and Kenny Pickett was not able to just be on a bad team where he got to play a lot of games. He was always on a team that was kind of in the hunt for a playoff spot. So with that being said, the scrutiny was so much more. Being a first round pick, the scrutiny was so much more. Being the leading player, the quarterback of a playoff caliber football team, put so much pressure on you, and you're put into situations where if you don't shine, if you don't become the reason for the win, you're going to be viewed as expendable, because you can win with Mason Rudolph. You can win with anyone when your defense plays to the level and your special teams play to the level that the Steelers have over the past 5, 6, 7 years, like where that's really been their bread and butter. It's been the only way that they've been relevant and winning. So Kenny Pickett, now, he spends a year in Philly and now he's here. I think he's just going to get another raw deal, but I think that he does have potential to improve. And that's the important thing. Like, you need to find yourself in a scenario where you can be a little bit more long-term. You can find your footing. And then when the opportunity presents itself, hopefully you're not in that spot again where it's like you're competing to try and go to the playoffs right away and everything matters so much. And then once you fail, it's clear and obvious as to what the issue was, what the problem was. It was the quarterback. So we got to move on from him. Like, Kenny Pickett is kind of being passed around in this way where he's not getting any opportunities. And I think with Cleveland, he's going to be the first guy. I've been saying this for a while, and I think a lot of people agree with that as well. So they're going to go out. He's going to be taking a lot of these reps, I'm sure, if those reports are true. And then from there, I mean, who knows? I think it could be as early as like the weeks leading into training camp when people, maybe there's an injury, maybe there's something where they just need more depth at the quarterback spot and they want a veteran in there. I could see it being as soon as that, but really no later than like 2 weeks into training camp. So, with that being said, I think if we're going to juxtapose that to Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel, but more so Shedeur Sanders, we know why. Like, that's just my belief that he is going to be the guy out of the two players. I thought Shedeur Sanders was a much better prospect. Here's what people need to understand on both sides: the supporters of Shedeur and the detractors of Shedeur. And I'm seeing both versions of these people in my comments. People being like, no, he should start week 1 because like the Browns don't have any chance at winning with any other quarterback more so than they would with Shedeur, or that he has a weak arm and he has sloppy footwork. So you get people from one end saying that he should be starting because he's going to give you the best chance to win and he should start immediately. And then other people saying he's not worth it. He's like, I've seen people saying like, oh, he's a 7th round talent. He's going to be cut. He's not going to be cut. He is going to get every opportunity to start on this team. And with his shortcomings that exist now, and even with Dillon Gabriel, he's the more refined prospect right now. I think he probably throws a better ball. I think he has a stronger arm for sure. And some people might disagree with that. It's like, you look at the tape, it's like Dillon Gabriel's boys are running underneath the ball. A lot of the time, Shedeur's guys are having to slow down to make a play on it. And that is something that can be improved, though. That is why the ceiling with Shedeur is so much higher. Dillon Gabriel is, to me, he's Case Keenum with really good mobility. A shorter, undersized guy who's really accurate and honestly has a stronger arm than Case Keenum, but he can also move too. So that's like a pretty damn good player. That's a really good backup to have on your team as well. But he's limited with what he can do because of his size. And even the little bit of athleticism that he does have, or a lot of bit of athleticism that he does has, that is something that will diminish over time. The style of player that Shedeur Sanders is a pocket passing, throw first player. And he has the height, he has the size, he can put muscle on his frame, he can improve his arm strength with his mechanics, he can improve footwork. All of these things are very fixable and doable. But the fact that he has the frame, and B, that his style of play is a guy who plays within the pocket, that translates to a long, illustrious career if everything goes right down the line. Like, this is all predicated on what is he going to do when given the opportunity. And it's going to have to be pretty convincing this year, as we've talked about, because that is a loaded quarterback draft next year. Even still, we don't know if any of them are going to be hits. We don't know if any of them are a guarantee. It's not like an Andrew Luck type guy coming out. It's not like that. But I just continue to go back and watch the tape, even watching my own film breakdown of Shedeur, and the things that he's good at, to me, just translate to success. I was watching Bill Belichick on Ryan Clark's podcast, and he talked about the 3 things that Tom Brady did so great that separated him from everyone else. And he talked about minimizing negative plays, making sure that the ball is always going forward, even if it's a 2-yard gain, even if it's a 3-yard gain, doing whatever you can to stay out of 3rd and long scenarios that are obvious passing downs when a defense can dial up a blitz, send pressure, drop extra guys because they know you're going to throw, whatever it is. If you stay out of those scenarios because you hit your checkdowns, because you hit your tight end on the over the ball route, you hit your running back on a swing pass, you do these little things over and over and over, you're consistently playing from 2nd and 7 and then 3rd and 5 and under. And that just does so much more for the success of an offense and a team and the rhythm than taking big negative plays, taking bad sacks. So that's one thing that I really hope that Shedeur focuses on. And I know a lot of the reasons for those negative plays, for the retreating in the pocket, was due to offensive line, not having a run game. I've talked about all these things. Like, I understand that's why, but it's still a habit that you're going to have to break. Because if we look back, Baker Mayfield as a rookie, when Freddie Kitchens wound up getting promoted to being the offensive coordinator. I think Todd Haley got fired partway through his rookie season, if I'm remembering this correctly. But they started playing him out of the shotgun a lot more. They started allowing him to like rip the ball down the seam to make bigger level throws. And then Baker wound up throwing 29 touchdowns and I think 11 interceptions. He turned out to have a really solid rookie year because they allowed him to be aggressive and play a style of football that was just more conducive to what he did at Oklahoma. But then the following season, once people got tape on him, and also after he'd been getting sacked a lot in the pocket, after 2 years of that, he really seemed like he was broken to a degree where he got ultra happy feet in the pocket. He seemed unsettled because he was just getting hit over and over and over and over again. And it wasn't until Kevin Stefanski coming in 2020 that play action style and limiting the amount of field that he had to read, because often on a rollout, you're reading half of the field. You're letting the backside of the play do its thing. Maybe it's leaking into the front side of the play, but you're not having to read that. You get to get on the move, get outside of the pocket, get some clear vision. And that's really what started reviving his career as time went on. And I think you're seeing some of that in Tampa Bay now as well. They got Bucky Irving. They got a solid O-line. He feels more comfortable, so he's playing better. But just that's a long rant and a roundabout way of saying that it took time for Baker to recover from kind of the shell shock of his rookie season and his sophomore season, from getting hit a lot, from holding on to the ball and making mistakes. And this is now with Shedeur, where that is why I continue to say don't start him till week 7, because there is a toll that happens to you when you're in high pressure situations, and Cleveland is going to be a high pressure situation because the narrative each and every week is going to be, should they, once he starts, if he starts, it's going to be, do we hold on to this guy or do we just start the tank and just hope for better positioning in the draft next year? It's going to be, is Shedeur going to be the guy? Is Dillon Gabriel going to be the guy? Or is it a quarterback next year? So that's going to be very heavy. That's going to be every question. It's going to be a reflection after every game being like, do you think you played well enough? Are you worried that the Browns are going to take another quarterback next year? And ultimately, I think he has the mentality to be able to handle that well. But I just think he will have the best chance to succeed if he is not shell-shocked too early, and if you get him a layup opportunity to play a good game against Miami in Week 8. And, you know, just I want to wrap this up by saying so much of football recruiting and like baseball, for example, so much between pitchers and quarterbacks is expected to be figured out at a young age. Meanwhile, some of the best pitchers, some of the best quarterbacks are guys who had to sit and learn for some time, who didn't necessarily have all of the talent in the world, but who had the work ethic to eventually, by age 23, 24, to put it all together and start building some momentum as time went on. You know, we always look back at Tom Brady. The guy never really got a consistent string of starts because he always had more talented people behind him, people with better athletic talents, with stronger arms. And when he was at Michigan, he didn't really get the chance. But when he was thrown to the wolves, when he was asked to go in and save a game, he could go out there and do it. He just had that mentality built into him, and he knew when to turn it on and how to turn it on. Then he goes to the NFL, doesn't play at all, and then week 2, 3, whatever, against the Bills, Drew Bledsoe gets injured, and Tom Brady really never gives it back, except, and this is the thing that we forget, especially if you're a bit, like I was 5 or 6 in that season when Brady beat Kurt Warner and the Rams. Like I barely remembered life at that time. But if you go back and you watch all that, like Brady got yanked in the AFC Championship against the Steelers, and Drew Bledsoe basically won them that game. So even there, it wasn't clear and obvious that he was like the messiah of the Patriots and was going to be the GOAT of football. He even still, like Tom Brady himself, still had tons of room to improve, even going on a Super Bowl run in his second season in the NFL. So that's what we have to understand with this. If Shedeur Sanders or Dillon Gabriel, any young quarterback, if they go out there and they struggle early on, that's not a reason to just pull the cord and jump and start looking for something new. You have to give these guys the grace and the comfort level that they're not going to be yanked, or that the team isn't just going to start intentionally tanking so they can take another quarterback next year, because people have the capacity to improve if they have the right mindset. And I think they're really hoping that both Gabriel and Shedeur have that mindset to be intentional towards growth and improving on their weaknesses. But only time's going to tell with that. So that's just something I wanted to touch on that. It's like too often we try and write a guy off when he has some bad games or this and that. Just like this is a comeback sport. This is a comeback culture. And you can't cast someone off or doubt them because you have no idea of what like they're made of inside. It's the classic. I think it wasn't Brian Baldinger. It was Steve Mariucci in the Brady 6 NFL Network show. He talks about like we saw the intangibles and the tangibles, but what we didn't see with Brady, what we couldn't understand, like we couldn't rip his chest open and see his heart. And hopefully we got some of that, because that is just so much more important than any physical tool. That's really what I'm trying to say here. The mentality, the approach to being a professional, and the ability to consistently improve and learn from your mistakes is what is going to change things. And those minor things that Bill Belichick pointed out, like staying ahead of the chains. That is how you do that for 20 years. The big moments are going to come. The big plays downfield are going to open up. And then eventually you got a couple Super Bowls. So that's a bit of an oversimplification, but that's just something that I wanted to touch on. And, you know, in terms of guys who are going to be the catalyst in ensuring you're not in second and third and long, is a guy like Harold Fannin Jr. So let's talk about Harold Fannin Jr. A lot of people, if you watch the MAC, if you just have been a big NFL mock draft simulator person yourself over time, you've seen that name Harold Fannin for the past 6 to 8 months. This dude, I really have gone in hard on his film over the past few days, because I'd done a little bit, because you can just see, even just from the numbers, even if I don't care that it's in the MAC, to have 117 catches, 1,555 yards, and how many touchdowns? I think I don't have it written here. Okay, yeah. He only had 5 drops. Some sources say it was only 4 drops. I saw 5 myself on the tape that I watched. This dude, to have those type of numbers and to be a 3rd round pick, to me is really unbelievable, because what you see in Harold Fannin Jr. is a lot of what you saw with David Njoku coming out of Miami. However, I really do think that, and I said this on the live stream, and this is really the crux of what I'm going to talk about in this video. I think Harold Fannin Jr., when it's all said and done through the first 8 years of his career versus the first 8 years of David Njoku's career, Harold Fannin Jr. will significantly outperform David Njoku and will be really looked at as the better of the 2 tight ends over this era of Browns football. They are almost identical in size and play style in a lot of ways. Harold Fannin is 6'3", 241 pounds, runs a 4.71, had a 34-inch vertical, and had a 4.39 in the shuttle, benched 225, 22 reps. David Njoku was 6'4", 246 pounds, ran a 4.64, a 4.34 in the shuttle, and had 20 reps on the bench. So without a doubt, there are a ton of similarities between these 2 guys. David Njoku is definitely, I think, the better explosive athlete. But what you notice when you're watching the film between these 2 guys is that Harold Fannin Jr. makes the routine plays so consistently and has, I think, a much better feel for the game in terms of his spatial awareness, his body control, and his ability to manipulate his body to make catches for his quarterback. One of my big complaints, and I think one of a lot of people's complaints with David Njoku, is that he drops the easy passes. The plays that he's expected to make, he not often, because often would be like, 50% of the time. It's not like that, but a decent chunk of the time relative to the difficulty of these plays, he is dropping the ball. He's dropping wide open passes on drag routes. He's dropping back shoulder fades in the end zone when the DB isn't even really getting hands on him. He's dropping slants. He's just making easy, simple plays much more difficult. And you can really see it in his hands and the way he tracks the ball. He has never looked fully comfortable catching the ball at the NFL level. There's been a couple times where he gets it on the run and he starts going, but there always seems to be like this dial-up internet thing where he catches the ball and he has to process it before he really starts moving and before he starts utilizing the gifts that make him so talented. I think he's so concerned about making the catch on the ball that sometimes he overthinks it and he drops it, or sometimes he catches it and doesn't get his eyes upfield and be able to utilize the gifts that make him so dangerous. Harold Fannin Jr., on the other hand, is a guy who can catch any ball on the run and immediately get his eyes upfield to understand who he has to evade to turn a little speed out, a little pass to the flats into a 40-yard gain. And he did this over and over and over and over. He can catch the ball down the seam. He is tough. He is not fearful of a safety coming down and closing in on him. But more importantly, like getting back to getting out of 3rd and long scenarios, you have to be great on 1st and 2nd down. This is the kind of guy who they lined him up in the backfield as a running back releasing him into the flats, throwing him screen passes, and then just being a check down merchant in general, just getting to that over the ball spot, 5 yards in front of the quarterback, beyond the line of scrimmage, those quick passes to the flats. If you can do those and make quick, safe throws for your quarterbacks, especially the young ones, to a big target who's going to catch the ball consistently. Remember, 117 catches and only 5 drops. If you can do that, that is the ultimate security blanket. And then with his ability to make the first guy miss, because that to me is the ultimate indicator of a good receiver. Like, being a great receiver is Jerry Rice, Odell Beckham Jr. in his prime, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, the guys who can touch the ball at 5 yards and then take it 95 to the house. Those dudes are like one of one, very special breeds. Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, Deshaun Jackson in his prime. Those level of dudes. That is extremely rare. That's like a once every few years type level of player. Like even Puka Nacua, who's really good and a lot of people are ultra high on him, he's not even on that level. Like A.J. Brown is like bordering on that level. He's a great possession receiver. He's not necessarily the guy who, whenever he touches it, he could score. Like that was Tyreek Hill in his prime. You have to have a different gear to be able that kind of dude. So that's like elite, great receiver. Being a good receiver is really the person who every time they catch the ball, they make the first guy miss and they get at least another 5 to 10 yards, because that's a guy who keeps your offense ahead of the chains every single drive. Every time he touches the ball, if he makes that first guy miss, you are getting a first down. And Harold Fannin Jr. was doing this constantly at Bowling Green. So with that being said, I think David Njoku, what he's amazing at is coming through in the clutch. Like I was at the Tampa Bay Cleveland game, Tom Brady's last season, sitting in the dog pound. Cleveland's down, Jacoby Brissett. They marched down the field. It was 4th and goal. David Njoku goes up and stabs that ball with one hand, gets his feet down in the back of the end zone. How do you make that play? And then against the Steelers, when DTR got his first start at home, I was also at that game. Njoku drops a back shoulder fade at the end of the first half, drops a touchdown, had 3 terrible drops on basic return routes, slants, quick outs on stick routes. It's like he does not make the routine, but he makes the extraordinary. And it's the famous Chuck Noll quote. Like I have it up on my computer over here. You don't have to be extraordinary. Make the ordinary plays all the time. And that's a loose translation to what it was. But that is the name of the game. And that is the name of the game with all the greats, with Tom Brady. Again, we all know the story. It was not the most talented guy, the most physically capable guy. Didn't have the strongest rocket arm. But he did the ordinary things all the time. He kept his team out of 3rd and long. He was always able to keep his team in the game. Even his ability to just understand when to take a sack and not force a throw, to be able to live to fight another down. That's what counts. And as a receiver, it's just catching the ball and making the first guy miss. That's really all you need. And that is something that the Browns haven't had. Like Amari Cooper is not a yak guy. He's not a yards after catch guy. He's great before and up to the catch, but after, he's not that elite. Anyone can be at the NFL level because they're all amazingly fast and great athletes if they get open space. But what about when you have to evade people trying to tackle you? And you can do it through multiple ways. Straight line speed, breaking people's angles, not ankles, they're angles. You can do it with side to side and burst, or you can do it with power running through guys. And the power includes just lowering your shoulder or using a straight arm, anything like that. When David Njoku is on, he can do those things. Remember against Baltimore, the angry runs. He takes on 4 guys, runs over Marlon Humphrey and all those dudes on Baltimore's defense. That was one of the great Browns games, and he was integral in that. And that catch and run near the end of the game was huge. But he just doesn't do it enough. So you can't bring in these young quarterbacks, especially if you're trying to run a lot more 12 personnel, and that just means 2 tight ends, 1 running back. That is what Cleveland is going to want to do. That's why they drafted Harold Fannin. So to have David Njoku, who I think will be the more vertical threat, the guy who you can get a mismatch, you can run him down the seam. Not that Harold Fannin can't do that, but I think with how the Browns are going to use him, it's going to be a lot more getting him on the move and getting him the ball in space to allow him to make that first guy miss and be a major yards after catch guy. I think David Njoku, like I mentioned, is going to be that vertical threat, more of the explosive play guy, because I think that's where he shines, because he just, some people are just like that. They need 3 touches in a game and they're going to make a big impact. They might score twice on those 3 touches. David Njoku can be that guy, but they need the consistent security blanket, the guy who catches the little dunks, the dinks, the 5-yarders, the 3-yarders, and can turn those into 7, 10, 15, potentially 20-yard gains. And with Harold Fannin Jr., like you're going to see in this video, in this film breakdown that we put out, he's a guy who can turn a 5-yard hitch route, a drag route 5 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, into a 40-yard gain like that. So I am extremely excited about Harold Fannin. I'm even more so excited now that I've really, gotten into this film and seen like what he did against Penn State. It was really remarkable stuff. And he has a lot of room to grow, as all these guys do. But that is the understanding that we have. So I'm not being like he's going to have a better season than David Njoku this year, but I think over 8 years, he's going to ascend. Like in the same time span of David Njoku's career, Harold Fannin Jr. is going to be a guy who's like, can absolutely break 1,000 yards multiple times. David Njoku still hasn't done that. His best season was 800 something, and that was with Flacco near the end. So we will see. And I think David Njoku still has a lot to unlock, but most of that is rooted in just making the routine plays and catching the ball when it comes your way, because that has been the biggest piece of the puzzle and why he's ultimately underachieved in his time in Cleveland. So now I want to shift a little bit. The Steelers. We're talking about the Steelers on our Browns channel here, and I'm not the biggest hater in the world. Look, my best friend is a Steelers fan. I can coexist and I can recognize the Steelers are a much better franchise in the grand scheme of history than the Browns are. We can get that out of the way. And if any Browns fans are upset about that, I'm sorry. You've been lied to your whole life. The Super Bowls don't lie, though. And they have just fallen so far off from what they were, even when I was growing up. I've talked about this a couple times on Twitter, on this and that. I think Mike Tomlin is a really good coach. I think he's been effective in his role. But what I don't think that we talk about enough is that his team that beat the Cardinals in that amazing Super Bowl, the greatest Super Bowl of all time, in my opinion, was largely inherited from Bill Cowher. The majority of that roster were guys who were already on the team that Bill Cowher brought in, that he coached up, that he set the culture. And then Mike Tomlin took over. And if James Harrison doesn't make that play before halftime, if Santonio Holmes doesn't have the greatest catch in Super Bowl history, they probably don't win that. Then they move on. Big Ben, still in his prime, still an extremely young player, to go out there and lose to the Packers, who were, Aaron Rodgers was in his prime, fantastic quarterback, one of the greats. To have that, and then from that point going forward, to only win a handful of playoff games. Now I don't think they've won a playoff game since 2016 or 2017. The Browns beat the Steelers in the playoffs. Like, that's how down bad they are. And they're just fully expected to go 9-7 or 9-8 or 10-7 now, and then get bounced in the first round of the playoffs and be down like 21 points in playoff games before they even start doing anything offensively. And to go Mason Rudolph to Justin Fields to Russell Wilson. And now you draft Will Howard and you drafted Kenny Pickett in the first round. Like, there's no cohesion in terms of their identity anymore. Like, Big Ben, regardless of kind of how he physically fell off at the end of his career. He was one of the great quarterbacks of my lifetime. And he always had a knack for getting his guys ready to go, to mount a comeback, anything like that. Like, that is so driven from the quality of your quarterback play. And ultimately, in Ben Roethlisberger's career, the Steelers' defense at times were reasons why their seasons didn't go the way that they wanted to go. They were really explosive offensively. Think about the players they've had, like Antonio Brown, Mike Wallace, even the rotating group of running backs they have. It's like you could name any one of them, and they've been successful to some degree. Great tight ends. The talent was always there for so long. Now it's flipped and it's inversed, where they still have offensive talent, but the quarterback has been so absent that it doesn't matter how well they do or how many miracle games they pull off. At the end of the day, they're going to lose in the first round because they don't have a great quarterback, or even a reliable one. And now they are being held hostage by Aaron Rodgers. And I think that is ultimately the reason why the Steelers didn't draft him. I don't think that that's a hot take either. A lot of people, I think, share this belief that Aaron Rodgers has been holding off. Some people say that he wants to go to Minnesota. I don't see how Minnesota would not re-sign Sam Darnold because they want to commit to J.J. McCarthy, but then they're going to bring in Aaron Rodgers for a year as a 40-year-old quarterback. I don't see that. But for the Steelers, they move on from Justin Fields. They allow him to go to New York, allow Russell Wilson to go to New York, which makes a lot more sense because he's older and there's really no future with Russell Wilson. You saw everything you could get out of him. It was gone by like week 10 or week 15, whatever. So you knew you needed a quarterback. There's all the reports that they like Shedeur. They have the opportunity to draft him at 21. They take Derek Harmon. Then they don't have another pick till the 3rd or 4th round and still don't take him. And then eventually they just take Will Howard and move on. And Will Howard is no threat to Aaron Rodgers. I fully believe that they were talking in their war room and leading up to the draft. I'm sure when there was buzz and Mike Tomlin was talking highly about Shedeur, that they got some sort of notification where it's like, hey, if you're really thinking about taking this guy, I might just retire, or I'm not interested in having any sort of controversy or people shouting for my backup. I had to deal with that at the end of my career with Jordan Love to a degree, and I don't want any of that. I think that something similar to that scenario went down, because with how high the Steelers were on Shedeur and the fact that they're in a win now position, because TJ Watt's 31 years old, Cameron Hayward is 35, like he is right at the end of the line. They could have put themselves in a position now to take a somewhat of a risk on Shedeur Sanders in the 4th round, but ultimately it's not. It's a 4th round pick. You could have had an opportunity to allow this guy to sit on the bench or even start this year and get to the point where you can blow things up to a degree, trade some of those veteran players and be positioned for success for the next 5 to 10 years. But instead, they are hitching their wagon to Aaron Rodgers. And I've been reading Ian O'Connor's book, the Out of the Darkness, The Mystery of Aaron Rodgers. I got about 100 pages left, about 2/3 of the way through. I don't understand how you could have an understanding of the way this dude operates and how he isolates people and just the drama that comes with Aaron Rodgers. I don't understand how you could see that. You've witnessed it forever, and then you just assume that it's going to be different this time around with you. Like, if I'm Mike Tomlin, this could be the end of me. And maybe that's better for Mike Tomlin to move on anyways, but you just see the wake that Aaron Rodgers leaves and the way that his ex-girlfriends talk about him, the way that his ex-teammates talk about him, the way that his family talks about him. That's the thing. Some people are seeing like the thing, like Danica Patrick came out. I don't know if you saw that, but she basically said that Aaron Rodgers was emotionally abusive. And some people are like, oh my God, chicks and blah, blah. It's like, first of all, why is that something to roll your eyes at? Whatever. Maybe she's airing dirty laundry in public and that's not great. whatever. It's a podcast. People talk. Aaron Rodgers talks about way crazier stuff publicly and openly about other people anyway, so he can take some of his own medicine. But it's all corroborated by teammates and by his family, and he's completely isolated himself. And I've never really been an Aaron Rodgers fan. Like, since I was young, I thought he was smug, not my type of dude. I think as a talent, as a football player, phenomenal. Like, the best arm we've ever seen, in my opinion. But all of that to say, the Steelers, the once great franchise, has been irrelevant for so long because they haven't had quarterback play. Now they're waiting on Aaron Rodgers, and he could still get up and wind up not moving on. And they missed out on Shedeur Sanders because, or maybe because, allegedly, referring to my beliefs, he didn't want that noise and he didn't want that competition going into camp. I really think the Steelers are in a terrible spot, and it's going to take, again, when I say terrible, I mean, it is so much better to be bad and try and rebuild than just to be where they have been for the past 10 years, it seems like. Just pretty good, but not good enough to get past the divisional, not good enough to even get past the wild card in most instances. And you're just left with an old roster, a coach who's tired, who might be losing sway in the locker room, and who fans are starting to get tired of. If I'm a Steelers fan, I would have wanted change 2 years ago. I would have rather been terrible last year, moved on from some pieces, allow those guys to pursue some championships with other teams going forward. And you could have got a haul for all of those guys. Like, to move on from TJ Watt potentially, to move on from Cameron Hayward and allow him to go to a contender. You could get a lot for that. And you still have a decent young core group of guys, but you need a ton of help on the offensive line. You need a ton of help in turn, receiver beyond DK Metcalf now. It's like you're going to need more. So I just think that brand and that style of organization, it's just so weird to see them now just eating out of Aaron Rodgers' hand and waiting for him to make a decision. Because, I mean, I don't think Aaron Rodgers is even like bad necessarily. Like, I think he actually had a solid year last year, all things considered, especially the way it finished. But it just seems that Mike Tomlin is such a strong personality and has such a good grip on things, and Big Ben worked within that because they kind of grew together. I do not see how it will work when Mike Tomlin is doing his thing, trying to set the standard, trying to continue to get the team up out of the mud, and you're getting Aaron Rodgers, who's so locked in on his ways, the way he wants to do things, the way he wants to check out of plays in certain scenarios, the way he wants to operate an offense. I don't see how that's going to work, and how that's going to work with like Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator as well, who teams have clearly had issues with. Go back to Atlanta and look at how that worked out, So interesting. It's going to be, I think today or in the next couple days is when this is going to happen, because OTAs are starting now. They're going to need to make a decision. And this really could be a situation where it's like maybe the Browns trade Kenny Pickett back to the Steelers. Like, that could be a reality that I think we might witness if Aaron Rodgers winds up backing out. So that's that. But final thing that I want to touch on, Darrell Doucette, Team USA flag football. So he comes out and he says, this is a sport that we've played for, actually, you need context first. So the NFL, PA, the owners, this and that, are basically green lighting or on the way to green lighting. I'm not exactly sure. For NFL players to play in the Olympics for flag football. Darrell Doucette's the guy who's come out and said, like, this is a different game and blah, 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 blah. Like, this is flag football. This isn't tackle football. There's a certain way of playing it. And like, we're the best at it. So this is what he comes out and says recently. This is a sport that we've played for a long time, and we feel like we are the best at it, and we don't need other guys. So the key word in that is that we feel like we are the best. You're not the best. If you were a better football player, you would be playing at the level that these guys are playing at. There's nothing within flag football that is not translatable to the tackle game other than tackling guys. It's like reaching at a different spot with your arm. I'm sure they can figure that one out and will be able to execute. And this was just the feeling that I got when I read that. This is like the upperclassman on a college football roster who's been putting in the work. He's been going to all the meetings for 4 years. He has been towing the company line all the way through, but he hasn't had his chance to start. But now, because he's a senior, it's his turn. He has earned it, and it is going to automatically go to him, or at least that's what he thinks. But this is the reality. You are still competing with the true freshman who just got recruited to replace the guy who you were backing up. That is like the mentality of this Darrell Doucette, and anyone who holds that belief that they are better than NFL players, even if it is flag football. You are not given the right to represent a country in the Olympics just because you've been doing it longer. It's like if I am, if I was the starting point guard on my intramural basketball team, which, by the way, shout out to my boys, Team Lockdown. We just got our ring in Brody League, goggles and everything. It was ecstatic. 4 points from your boy. If I'm just being there, I'm like, hey man, I've been the center on Team Lockdown in Brody League recreational basketball, so I'm holding it down. And then next year, I'm gonna start putting up more shots because I put my work in. It's like if there's a better shooter on the team who's a better ball handler and doesn't turn over the ball as much as me, I can't expect to be that starting guy just because I've been there longer. It's like, it's a meritocracy. The Olympics is the ultimate meritocracy. The people who are best should be starting and playing, and they will. So it's just like kind of asinine to have this mentality and like gatekeeping that you've split the atom with flag football and that it's so different. All of these guys have played touch football in the schoolyard. All these guys have played flag football in gym class in high school. But more importantly, they are NFL players and they are better. You know what no one wants to watch? Nameless, faceless dudes running around playing flag football. Flag football is so uninteresting in general. It's probably not even going to be fun to watch with NFL players. It will be in the instances of like for example, I am Canadian, also American, but I am like Canadian. That's what I identify more as. We got a lot of great football players from Canada who have made their way into the NFL. Like I played with my buddy Nikola Kalinick, who's tight end for the Falcons now, just signed there. He was with the Rams for a while. I've played against people who have gone on to play in the NFL, and like guys like Javon Holland, one of the best safeties in the league, is from British Columbia. So there's a lot of really great Canadian football players. Like that's going to be fun to see Canada and the US go up against each other. The USA is still going to win for sure. But if there wasn't that, if you weren't having guys who represent your country, who play professional football, who you can identify and know, it's no more interesting than going to the park and watching a bunch of weekend warriors go out and sling the ball around. So I think you can expect the hook very soon for these guys. And honestly, if you want to prove it, you go get your best 7 and the best 7 NFL players who are up to playing in this thing and let them beat you down and embarrass you and then take it over and they'll go to the Olympics. So bit of a weird mentality. Don't like the gatekeeping. However, that's just the way it is. So my people, be on the lookout for that Harold Fannin Jr. film study. We will probably be back with another podcast later on this week to check in on OTAs, all that news coming out. The season is picking up, so be sure to tune in, subscribe to the channel, and we are working on the optimisticfanclub.com. It's going to be an exclusive website for the people who want to continue to support, because like we mentioned, the Patreon, I just feel like it's just not it. We need a site. We need bigger things, better things. Stay tuned for that. We'll see you in the next one.